Average Joe travels the California Inscape. Season 5, Children of the Pumpkins. Episode 6, The Spy Who Trick-or-Treated Me. Story conceived and written by Penguin Pete. Atmospheric sense of dread provided by Clyde Wren and Dodge Zelko. And featuring the vocal stylings of This Is Signal. As the orange-robed crowd retreated down the street with Anne and Starwing in tow, leaving me standing in front of the Magic Eye bookshop, I reflected that this had to be the worst-case scenario in detective work. Say what you will, but your typical gumshoe never has their partner charged with witchcraft and sentenced to burn at the stake. I could feel my cool breaking for once. I had no idea what I could do. Worse yet, Anne is a hothead and never goes anywhere without a wand jammed up her sleeve, said wand being capable of belching a fireball that could bake a bunch of these pumpkin cultists into a pie. And that's to say nothing of Starwing, who was guilty of nothing more than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anne was in just the right spot to start a fight she couldn't possibly win, but would go out in a rage of fury anyway. I needed to think of a fast plan, and if it also happened to be a good plan, so much the better. In that moment, the words of my lawyer buddy Jack Hill came to me. He had a favorite saying engraved on a wooden sign over his desk. If you can't bedazzle them with the facts, then baffle them with bold ink. Absently fumbling in my pocket, I felt that silly Betty Boop Pez dispenser that Lucretia had provided me. I jogged up the street until I caught up with a cultist who was lagging behind. He was a fat kid sweating in his orange hood and robe, panting to keep up. I casually whipped out the Pez and pretended to eat a few, being sure he saw me. Sure enough, he asked me for some, to which I graciously obliged. He commented that they were pumpkin spice flavor. That's our Lucretia, I chuckled quietly to myself. She thinks of everything. After the large lad passed out for sleepy time, I dragged him into a side alley and relieved him of his robe and hood, which fit me fine, thanks to his considerable girth. Maybe when he woke up, if he never saw me again, he would think I was a dream. That suited me fine. Dreams have no consequences. It's always best to be a dream. Then I hoofed back to the Magic Eye bookshop, hoping I would find something useful there. I had my disguise, but I needed something more to maintain the subterfuge beyond casual inspection. The Magic Eye stocked various pagan knickknacks and trinkets. I browsed the shelves until I found some chalk used for drawing runes and pentagrams, and God bless Starwing's inventory management, she had orange. I opened my robe and hastily drew a copy of the orange triangle pumpkin pie sliced tattoo on my chest, the same design I'd seen on our unlucky stiff down at the morgue. I knew this much. The Fae had only enslaved so many young men in our region, but most of the town was wearing orange hoods now. Ergo, most of them would be missing the tattoo that the Fae branded on their direct subordinates. The rest had been recruited along the way because, well, that's how cults work. I might be able to pull rank if it came down to that. I plopped a Carson City Morgan dollar on the counter to pay for the chalk, hopefully Starwing will find it, and hurried down the street to the town square. But trying to run in this robe was a hassle, and the sloppily cut eye holes on the hood made me half blind. By the time I got to the town square, I saw that this cult meant business. Several platforms had been hastily constructed from scrap wood and pallets, erected around upright wooden poles with kindling piled around. No kidding, but they were going full Salem, Massachusetts here. I spotted Anne and Starwing, both surrounded by 20 or so orange-robed cultists. I counted some 100 men or more milling about. For a moment, my cracking mind recalled a scene from the Fantasia film I'd seen in the cinema a few years ago. I imagined the cultists as dancing around like the animated mushrooms, only these were all more akin to orange traffic pylons. With no idea how this would play out, I spoke up. I say, who's in charge here? One of the cultists turned to me. Nobody's in charge. We're an autonomous collective which appoints an elected council to serve as a judiciary in legislation. Our council members are chosen by a bi-weekly committee to act as representatives who can establish new bylaws by a 2/3 majority and... I cut him off. Please, I am in haste. Who has the mark of the Fae? I helpfully opened my robe to display my pumpkin pie tattoo rendering, turning so everyone around could get a glance at it without scrutinizing it long enough to notice the mixture of orange chalk dust and sweat, which had begun tinting my virile thatch of chest hair. The Fae appointed some of us as leaders. Does anyone else have this? I was hoping to find the main witch burner and, I don't know, offer them a pez or something. Instead, the cultist who was explaining politics to me shook his head. Then the cultist next to him said that he didn't have it either. This continued to ripple through the crowd, with several of them saying they thought somebody else had it. After a bit of shuffling around this way, it seemed that everybody was wearing a robe to hide the fact that they didn't have the tattoo, while also assuming that everyone else had it. Right then, I confidently asserted, it seems that I'm the highest-ranking official here, so it is up to me to conduct the witch burnings. Before anyone else could marshal an objection, I climbed up on the nearest platform and called for the accused to be presented before me. Anne and Starwing were hustled over to my area. The cultists seemed prone to get a little grabby with the ladies. I saw Anne swat a cultist's hand away from her posterior and thought, if only he knew. She could easily take that hand off and send it back to him by registered post. Now, Anne was beaming at me, having recognized my voice under the hood. I suppose it is a bit distinct. Maybe. She was trying hard not to laugh. I cleared my throat and spoke officiously, like any good judge at a witch trial, and called out, "Who here has a city public burning permit?" I watched as orange-robed heads turned to one another and back again. It seems nobody had one. Well, no matter. I can get one from City Hall and meet you back here in 5 minutes. A voice from the crowd spoke up. But today's Saturday. Oh, well, that's a shame. We'll have to wait until Monday when they open. The politico-cultist spoke up. This is exactly why we were applying for sovereign citizenship. It's this federal bureaucratic deadlock that stifles true progress and lets the evils of witchcraft run unchecked, and... I interrupted him again, this time with a wave of the hand, and put on my reassuring tone. Gentlemen, I have personally consulted with legal counsel and seen your paperwork. Good job on filling out the proper forms. I said this as I mentally recalled the forms Jack Hill had shown me, several of which were scrawled in crayon. The petitions are working their way through the legal system as we speak. We just have to wait for the paperwork to clear the proper legal channels. I mean, where would we be if we didn't follow insurgency protocol? When you do everything slapdash and hastily, that's how the witches win. My point was surprisingly well taken. Several orange hoods nodded to each other in agreement. I pounced on the opening. So, we reconvene here next Monday. I will take charge of the prisoners until then. That's it. No witch burning until Monday. Thank you. You may return to your pumpkin farming. That is all." The crowd began to break up, and I hopped down from the platform and took Anne and Starwing each with an arm on a shoulder to steer them away from the center of town. That was almost too easy.
Easy for you.
In this moment, I was her knight in shining armor, even though part of me wanted to see Anne start zapping fireballs at the cultists. But with all the flammable material around, we might have burned down the entire town. Starwing, aghast at the state of affairs, shuddered.
"What in the hell has happened to this town?"
I knew just what she meant. When things go downhill in Chatterskull Falls, they go very fast and very far. Anne nudged me in the ribs and pointed to a line of cultists who were each receiving a cup of orange liquid from a barrel, doled out with a soup ladle. They had thought to provide refreshments for the event.
That's no ordinary punch. It's pumpkin spice punch, a special concoction brewed by the Fae. I learned from overhearing from our hooded friends that the Fae have added a secret ingredient to the nutmeg to make it just as addicting to humans as it is to the Fae. This punch seems to keep them docile and easily controlled.
As if sensing our conversation, several cultists came to me with cups of punch. "Here, Your Honor, you must be punch. Some punch. Some punch, sir." I politely accepted a cup, but made a point to stall instead of drinking it. I asked the politico, "Say, I seem to have missed a couple of briefings lately. Why are we burning witches? How did we get here from pumpkin farming?" "Well, only men are capable of serving in the pumpkin fields, so the women, they started to get up a protest. You know, like the suffragettes who wanted votes for women. So the Great Pumpkin decreed that all women are infidels seeking to undermine our work. We figured, why not just call them witches?" I nodded sagely. "So, this Great Pumpkin, you take his orders, but say you have no leader?" "Well, the Great Pumpkin is more like a spiritual guide to all of us." "Of course he is. Well spoken, O faithful prodigy. Go and continue to do the Great Pumpkin's bidding." The kid held up his hands with his fingers and thumbs spread in a triangle shape. "The pumpkin spice must flow." I returned the salute, hoping I got it right. Well, of course I got it right. It's just a triangle. "The pumpkin spice must flow." I then led Anne and Starwing back down the street until we were out of sight of the cultists, then made a break for it, sprinting back to the magic eye. Zipping inside, Starwing flipped the store sign around to say closed and locked the door. Anne moved around the shop, extinguishing candles, darkening the interior.
We're staying right here and not sticking our noses outside until this blows over. Joe, you're the point man. Go get 'em.
I would, except that I don't know where to get 'em.
How's that robe and hood holding up?
I can't see. I can hardly breathe. I'm sweating like a hog at a bacon festival. And now I've just gotten myself hungry.
Well, you'd better get used to it. Remember the weird Fae manifestation you met out in the woods? The little girl with the creepy voice?
Of course, like it was the start of the season. That season being autumn.
That must mean you were close to the main farm. You must have wandered too close to the operation, and the Fae got nervous and went to check on you. So their headquarters must be there. Go there and find this Great Pumpkin person, whoever that is. Dose them with the hallucinogenic whammy powder in the ring I gave you. Break their power, and the spell on the cultists should be broken.
Then we can go back to the Fae, tell them we filled our side of the bargain, and get Sammy released. Then we can go to Chief Wankins and get paid.
Holy Cthulhu's tentacles. You guys got yourselves into a heck of a pickle. How did you get working with the Fae and the police at the same time?
You don't stay in this business long without being a master contract negotiator. Starwing suddenly rushed to me and wrapped me in a tight hug.
Thank you for rescuing me.
Think nothing of it. We need you to stay in business. You gals lay low here. Don't even answer the door. Nobody here but us chickens, so to speak. I'll go track down the great pumpkin, and if we hit any snags, I don't know, send Samantha or something." An hour later, near dusk, I was driving the Packard down a country farm road near Goblin Grove, where I had first encountered the otherworldly child. Sure enough, I came to a huge gate with a sign over its arch. It read, "Fairy Fantasy Farms." A line of trucks waited at the gate to get in, and another line of trucks loaded with pumpkins was driving out. A group of orange-robed subjects tended the gate, one of them with a clipboard. Parking a bit away and using the chalk to refresh my tattoo, I casually sauntered over to the gate. The cultist with a clipboard asked me my name. In response, I opened my robe to show the tattoo. In turn, he and the other cultists opened their robes to show the same tattoo. That pleasantry was behind us. But he still wanted my name. I sputtered the only name I could think of at the moment. Sammy Spunker. The cultist paged through his paperwork, and sure enough, Sammy Spunker was on the list. But the cultist showed me that his name had been scratched out. It looked like my luck was running thin. The other cultists gathered around the clipboard and argued about whether I could be admitted or not. Meanwhile, I quietly backed away, alongside the road as the line of empty trucks returning to the farm continued to drive in. At the last second, I hopped onto the back of the flatbed and lay low amid the empty pumpkin crates. I was immediately rewarded with a face full of slimy smashed pumpkin guts and the itch of ants crawling under my robe. But it worked. I was driven inside. I peeked back over the tailgate at the cultists as they looked around, wondering where I'd gone. I gave it 5 minutes before their brains, stewed on the Fae's pumpkin spice punch, would forget I existed. I would be a dream to them, with no consequence. As I was driven deeper into Fairy Fantasy Farms, I kept an eye out, hoping to memorize a quick escape route. The pumpkin fields stretched out in all directions, vines and orange globes. The pumpkins here were huge, like you could drive a car through them. I even saw scarecrow-like creations, made of braided vines for arms and legs, and a jack-o'-lantern for the head, with flaming eyes in the dusky darkness. Then one of them moved. I almost died of terror. We drove past several of these hulking abominations. From Anne having shared some occult knowledge with me, and a little bit of it sticking in my brain, I knew what they were. They were golems, most popular with the Kabbalist wing of the occult, but apparently someone here had learned the technique. The pumpkin golems were loading pumpkins into crates and engaged in other menial labor. I sank into the mash of pumpkin remains and busy ants. Golems. Why did it have to be golems?